the race to qualify for the Champions League is hotting up at the moment, and with most teams having 10 games to go, we decided now would be a good time for Toby and I to predict who's going to make the top 5 places and make the Champions League. But Toby, it's all really, really tight at the top of the table, and I think with the Premier League more or less being sewn up with the relegation, I think it's quite easy to predict. Champions League is what we're all looking at now, and it's quite exciting. How do you find it?
Yeah, I mean, looking from second place, even with Arsenal, who've got a decent bit of a lead, all the way down to 10th place Fulham, there's only 13 points. And with how the cups in the season might unfold, there could be a load of European places up for grabs this season. So it is certainly going to go down to the wire, and it is certainly going to be very, very exciting. It's looking likely that it's going to be 5 positions in the Prem for Champions League football from first down to fifth, with those UEFA coefficients looking very nice for the English teams as they're performing well in Europe. And there could even be up to 7 teams in the Champions League from England next season, which is crazy if we see a Champions League winner finish outside of those league positions. And the Europa League winner, if that's Tottenham or United, they would also go into the Champions League. So it could be 7 teams in the Champions League, which is absolutely mental. Plus potential of some Europa League and some Conference League. In a crazy hypothetical world, there could be 11 English teams in European football next season. So much to play for and so much great football to look forward to, even if it feels like the title race is wrapped up.
Yeah, I think 11 is a bit much. I think even 7 honestly feels like a bit of a stretch with how some of the teams are performing in the Europa League at the moment. But I think it is definitely all up for grabs in the league, that's for sure. And we're going to start off, I'm going to do all 10 teams who are currently in the top 10 in the Premier League. And we're going to start off with Liverpool. And I think this is just going to be an honorary mention. We have to mention them because they're obviously first. They're probably going to go on to win the league, and they're definitely going to make the top 4, well, top 5 this season. Is there anything else to say? They're definitely going to be in it.
Yeah, it feels like at this point, not only are they definitely going to be in the Champions League next season, but they're definitely going to win the Prem this season. Even after a pretty poor first half against Southampton, going 1-0 down at half time, completely turned it around in that second half. And it's performances like that where I think that show how much they deserve that league title. They have been by far away the best team in the league this season. Arsenal dropping more points against United again on the weekend. I'm not crying as an Arsenal fan, I promise. But yeah, each game that comes, it seems more and more inevitable they're walking away with it almost at this point.
Yeah, I think we've got so much to talk about with the other teams. I don't think we really need to spend any more time. I think it's obvious, like you said. So we'll move on to Nottingham Forest because they had a very big game in the early kickoff against Manchester City at home, which they won 1-0. And I think for a lot of people, I think we've maybe been waiting for the moment that Nottingham Forest maybe take a dip in form, maybe drop off. But with that win against Man City, I think for me personally, it was kind of a moment where I went, okay, maybe they're not going to drop off. Maybe they're here to stay. And I think from what I've seen, I think collectively among fans of the Premier League, I think a lot of people are thinking that way. Are Nottingham Forest here to stay? And could they actually do it and get Champions League football next year? I'm starting to believe. Are you?
Yeah, as you said, Meva, it really felt like a statement win on the weekend. The way that they've been performing and the results that they've been getting, it felt like almost, surely they've got to start maybe dropping a few more points, going back down to maybe the expectations that we had at them at the start of the season. But with a massive, massive win like that over Manchester City, it's starting to feel how it did with Aston Villa almost last season, around a similar point when they had 2 really, really big wins against Arsenal and Manchester City. And people started to really think, okay, they're not just here based on luck or based on a good run of form. They are deserving of being in those Champions League positions. And Forest, certainly that case at the moment. Yeah, their underlying numbers aren't particularly great in terms of expected goals and expected goals against. But I think when a team like this is riding so high and their momentum is so good, you can almost get away with it, and you can live on the atmosphere at the club. You can live on the atmosphere in the dressing room. Really, really push on, and the quality that they have in that side and the way that they're playing at the moment. I think a lot of people now are really big believers that they are going to be getting Champions League football next year. When at the start of the season, most of us had them going down in predictions, which is absolutely mental.
Hey, I didn't have them going down. I had them in 17th. You were the one who was like, oh, just to be different, maybe I'll have them going down. But I think everyone, let's be honest, we've all had to take a big slice of humble pie. And I think what's really helped is the fact that they've actually now, compared to previous years, got actually a really tight knit squad, a squad that know each other and they can rely on each other. And they've got like no injuries. They have one injury to a backup goalkeeper, Carlos Miguel de Santos Pereira. Great name. But he's the only one, and they've got all of their other players fit and available. And if anything, I think this international break coming up is arguably come at the worst time possible because while on the back of beating Manchester City, they got a whole week in between games to prepare. I think this Nottingham Forest side could potentially do it. The only possible distraction they could have is the FA Cup, which I'm trying to see who they're playing against, but I don't quite remember. Toby, help me out. Who are they playing against the FA Cup?
Brighton. Yeah, Brighton. That rematch, that 7-0 win. So could be a tasty.
That could be tasty. But I'm looking at the fixtures in the league as well. I'm thinking about it, and they got Ipswich away next. You would think they're going to win. Man United at home, Aston Villa away, Everton at home, Tottenham away, Brentford at home, Crystal Palace away, Leicester at home, West Ham away, and final game of the season, Chelsea at home. That could be absolutely massive. But I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, compared to where the other teams are in the league, lower than them, can they at least get maybe 15 to 20 points from the remaining 30 games, considering no one else is really going on a streak at the moment? I think they could, and I've got Nottingham Forest in the Champions League next year. Is that too bold of me, or do you agree?
Yeah, listing out those fixtures, you've got 8 teams out of their next 10 games in the bottom half of the league. I think probably out of all of this top 10, they actually may have the easiest run of fixtures, which is absolutely crazy and has lined up so well for Forest. I agree. I also am a firm believer that they're going to do it. For me, they're almost one of my locked-in picks at this point to get Champions League because of that fixture run, because of the momentum they're on. And ultimately, I think it's either third or fourth for me. I'm really solid in Forest finishing there. I would maybe go for third because of those fixtures. Where would you stick them in the table if you had to give them a position?
So I agree. I just wanted to not give you a little bit of bias, but I actually completely agree. I think Forest are going to be in the Champions League next year, and I am as confident as that as I am Liverpool winning the league. I think Forest are a great side, and I think they've been really well coached. I've actually got them in fourth, just because of the fact that I think they have the quality, no doubt, but I think nerves may come into it, but they will still have more than enough to qualify. And even in the regular season top 4, I would still have them. I would have them fourth. The team I would have just above them is actually the team we're going to come on to next in Manchester City, just because I think they have a little bit more experience. So I would have Forest in fourth, Man City in third. Are you willing to budge? Do you agree, disagree, or what are your thoughts on Manchester City?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Manchester City in fourth, and it's very close between the two for me. Almost complete polar opposite seasons in terms of expectations, in terms of strengths and weaknesses. We see how solid Forest's backline has been this season. Matt Sells on to potentially get the Golden Glove, and City, where those defensive liabilities have really been an issue for them, and maybe that's why I put them in fourth. I think the issues that they're having haven't really been solved as of late. They're still struggling to create chances. They're still giving away far too many chances and far too many high quality chances. Their fixtures are not bad. They're about middle of the park. I think they've got a few tough ones in there where they could maybe get found out a little bit again. But no Champions League, no European football. Still a really good squad. It's very close. So I would be pretty happy to put City in third, because at the end of the day, it's Manchester City, isn't it? We know how good they are.
I tell you what, for the purposes of not playing safe, and let's give Nottingham Forest actually the credit that they deserve, because based on this season, I think they do deserve to finish third. Let's just give it to Nottingham Forest. I think they deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, if they end up finishing fourth, I don't think they're going to be particularly disappointed with that. But yeah, as you said, to give them some really strong credit, and after that result, that 1-0 win, more than happy to keep them in third.
All right, we got it locked in. Liverpool in first at the moment, and Nottingham Forest will be making Champions League in third. Let's touch a little bit more though on Manchester City, because I do agree. Defensively, they haven't been great. I mean, at the goal Nottingham Forest did score from Callum Hudson-Odoi, yes, it picks up a little bit of deflection on the way, but I think Edison should maybe do better. Plus the fact that they got some injuries in defence now, Akanji, Stones, Ake, none of them are ruled out for the entirety of the season, but they're all going to be touch and go for the end, and it doesn't look likely they're going to be making it back. And so you got the likes of Mateus Nunes playing on right back. You also got Rico Lewis, who's not been in great form, as we discussed in our last video talking about England. There is something to be able to get out with Man City. I think even the wide players in Doku and Savinho, they're great. They do everything fantastically well up until that final end product. Once they nail that, those two are going to be absolutely unstoppable. But it's not quite working out. Obviously, we saw Omar Mamouche on the bench as well against Nottingham Forest. We saw when he was playing up front on zone against Liverpool, he couldn't quite do it without Haaland. Nothing's quite clicking, but they are getting there, which is why I think that's why they're going to be in the top 5 this year. I think they're just going to get over the line. Is it something similar for you? And if you do see a world in which Man City don't make the top 5, what would be the reason why?
Yeah, I think the quality that they have in that squad is certainly still strong enough to carry them through games where they're not playing particularly well. Even when City aren't at their best, they're still fantastic at times. What could let them down, I still think, is that defence. And like you said, with all of those defensive injuries, new players coming in like Kushnov and Reyes, who are really, really good players, but haven't necessarily had much time to adapt. And I think with those few niggly injuries, they could be a bit of a pain where the back four may be changing, where Pep's seeing issues and trying to fill it with players who maybe aren't quite ready, players that have a little bit more experience in their Manchester City side. So that could ultimately worsen them, I think, potentially trying to force players back in if their defensive issues continue.
Yeah, I think Kushnov is still very raw, but I think he did have a great game against Chris Wood. There was a moment when he bullied him off the ball, and I thought, hang on a minute. No way have I just seen that, but he is actually that strong. Outside in the midfield it doesn't feel right. I know that's not particularly analytical or providing any great insight, but I think that it's still a work in progress, and maybe I don't know, maybe an 8, someone to link up the play apart from the defensive midfielder. I think that they're missing that at the moment as well. I think Bernardo Silva hasn't quite been added, and sometimes playing out wide. Kovacic doesn't really have the legs for that, and is also wants to sit alongside the number 6, not go past them. I think that Gundogan's best days are probably behind him, but he's still probably got a role in the squad. I think they're still not quite right. So yeah, I mean, if we put Nottingham Forest over, we're putting Manchester City 4th. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I think that works for me.
Okay, so Liverpool in 1st, Nottingham Forest in 3rd, and Manchester City in 4th. Jeez, we're already giving away 3 of the 5 places that we think. Are Fulham going to be making it? Because at the moment, they're currently in 10th place on 42 points, 5 points off Manchester City in the Champions League places. But their recent record, 3 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses, 10 points in the last 15 is actually one of the better sides of all the ones we're going to talk about. Do you see Marco Silva's men making it in?
Yeah, and they've had another really impressive season, and certainly I think a season that's overperforming maybe against expectations and against quality in their squad. I think they're doing really, really well to keep up with these sides in and around them, like your Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, who I think on paper do have stronger sides, but Fulham still put up an absolutely fantastic fight in doing so. In 10th position at the moment, a pretty tough run of fixtures to come. And again, like I said, I'm not sure where in those games where when you're coming into this run in terms of trying to get European football, who's really going to pick up that game by the scruff of the neck and win it for them. I'm not sure if they have too many of those sorts of players in their side. I think they're very, very good, very solid. They have the 3rd best XG against, as in the 3rd lowest expected goals against. Really, really good defensive performance from them this season. Just not sure if they have enough firepower to really impress me to put them much higher than they are at the moment, to be honest. How about yourself? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think I've been trying to do the maths, and the last 5 seasons, the most recent ones, 5th place on average has got 66 points. And for this season, 5th place would get you Champions League. Do I see Fulham getting another 24 points from the remaining 30? That's 8 wins. I'll be honest, I don't. Especially with the fixtures, like you said, they've got Tottenham, Arsenal, Liverpool next 3. That could already mean they're not going to get 66 points as just a benchmark. They've also got Chelsea later on, Villa, Man City. I think they've had a really great season, and it is kind of one where every season, maybe Fulham have a good season, maybe exceed expectations. I think that partly comes down to the fact that they seem to lose a lot of players at the beginning of the summer and then don't end up recruiting until right at the end of the window. And so you always expect maybe or anticipate that Fulham are going to do worse than they actually do. But are they? I think the best, in my opinion, Fulham could do this season is get Europa League. I don't think that I trust them to score as many goals and to outscore the teams they're going to come up against as much as I should. I think if there was a player to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, it should be Emil Smith Rowe. But even he has had a couple of injury issues as of late. It could be Alex Iwobi, a fantastic run down the right hand side for Fulham's goal against Brighton on the weekend. But I'll go be honest, I just don't see it. So, in terms of 1 to 10, where I think Fulham are going to finish, if I was a betting man, I think I'd put them 10th. I put them the least likely out of all these teams to finish in the Champions League, and that's not just because they're in 10th, because I think coming up, I think it's going to be tough. Is that a bit harsh?
I don't think so. I think I'm going to have to agree with you on that one, mate. I've also got them in 10th. I just think the teams ahead of them have a little bit more quality and play better football at times as well, a little bit more expansive. But the two teams behind them as well, Palace and Brentford, only 3 and 4 points behind Fulham, and I think that's maybe a fairer comparison. It feels maybe they're sort of dragged into this European football race where I think the teams are better quality. Whereas in terms of Palace and Brentford, who again, really good quality sides, playing good football and having good seasons, and Fulham, I think to be ahead of them is really good credit to how Fulham have played this season. But yeah, just not quite enough for me either. So yeah, I'd throw them in 10th too.
Okay, let's move on then to Brighton and Hove Albion, which beat Fulham on the weekend thanks to a 98th minute João Pedro winner, I think it was, 98th minute, yeah. Thank goodness for my fantasy team. He got me the 9 points. I was buzzing with that. But Brighton and Hove Albion, the second most informed team in the Premier League at the moment. In first place is Liverpool, getting 13 points from the last possible 15. Brighton are level with Crystal Palace for getting 12 in the last 15. So they're on a fantastic run, winning the last 4. 46 points, only 1 point off Manchester City in 5th. They've got Europa League before under Roberto De Zerbi, and with the quality of players you look at in this Brighton squad, they have the potential to do it again. But will they, Toby?
Yeah, it's a season that I think has actually gone really under the radar for Brighton. I think we've heard a lot about Bournemouth and how well they've been playing. And I think Brighton, yeah, they are still certainly in and around there as well. Really, really good season so far, with a lot of new players and the new manager coming in as well. It's fantastic how quickly they've transitioned, obviously after De Zerbi. So very, very good stuff for Brighton. Again, as we keep seeing season on season, there's going to be a point where it's not surprising that they're in and around that top 8 consistently. The only thing with me for Brighton is that they have got a few tough fixtures left. They've got City, they've got Newcastle, they've got Villa. So that may be a bit of a sway towards me. I have got them in 8th at the moment, which does feel a little bit harsh. And for me, it's very, very close sort of between the two teams I have in 7th and 8th. But based on the fixtures and maybe the momentum of a few other sides, they could get Conference League in 8th if there's a bit of luck with the League Cup victory, which again I still think is a fantastic achievement for them anyway. Where do you have them? I'm really excited to hear this one because I want to know if I've been a bit harsh to them.
See, it's difficult with Brighton because obviously you look at the squad and you've got some fantastic players. I mean, Mitoma should be Champions League quality player. Carlos Baleba looks like he's going to be the next big thing. But they do have some inconsistencies in their squad. And I think I was looking, and I think it was, if I remember right, 8 game weeks from game weeks 13 to 20 where they didn't win a single game. And I think they had all 3 newly promoted sides in that run, and they didn't beat a single one of them. I think they drew against all 3 of them. Since then, I think they've beaten Ipswich Town and Southampton. So that's okay, but it does seem like they're one of those teams, a little bit like Fulham. They could beat anyone on the day, and they could lose to anyone on the day. And obviously, they lost 7-0 to Nottingham Forest, which we mentioned just briefly earlier. I think it's one where, with Man City and Aston Villa coming up next, I actually fancied them to do okay. Because I think once a team tries to impose their style of play on the game and they try and attack, leave those open spaces in the back, I think that's when Brighton are the best. I actually fancy Brighton to struggle more against the likes of Crystal Palace, Leicester, Brentford, and West Ham more than anyone else. And because of that, I also have them in eighth place. There's too inconsistent. I think that Hertzler's a great manager, will be an even better manager than he is now, but I think he's still learning on the job. It's still just a little bit too early for me with Brighton. And if anything, I really want them just to have a 20 goal a season forward of some sort, maybe a striker, maybe right wing, left wing, whoever. But they're not quite there for me. And I think if they're struggling against Man City and Aston Villa in the next two games, then it could put them potentially out of the running quite early on. And then we kind of go, oh, it's not going to be this year for Brighton. So I've got them in eighth as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I still think in that sort of first season under Hertzler as well, that's still a good result. And if they get a bit of luck and get European football, that's just a major plus for them. But yeah, as you summed up really, really well there, I think just not enough at the moment. Maybe a few sides a little bit further up that are a bit more established as well, maybe in their systems too. So yeah, potentially just missing out, which is a shame for the Seagulls.
Yeah, but I still think if they got European football of some sort, I think that'd be great. If they got Conference League, Brighton have to be one of the favourites, honestly. But we'll move on then from the Seagulls to the Gunners in Arsenal, who are second place at the moment, 8 points ahead of Manchester City in fifth with 55 points. They've got no FA Cup, but of course they are through to the last quarterfinals of the Champions League. So they haven't been great of late. 2 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss. Only 8 points from possible 15. Obviously not going to be in the title race anymore. But could Europe be a potential distraction for them, Toby? Or do you think they will get over the line?
I think they'll get over the line. I think they'll still be able to hold on to that second place position. I think they do have a little bit more quality in than those teams that are below them at the moment, and they've got a pretty decent fixture run left for the last 10 games of the season. Only Newcastle and Liverpool towards that back end that I think are a bit tougher. Their next maybe sort of 5 or 6 fixtures I think are quite nice for them as well, which comes at a good time. And maybe a time when they need a little bit more confidence in the league, in the Premier League. With Saka potentially coming back soon, Martinelli coming off the bench against United over the weekend, a little bit more of that attacking firepower back that they have certainly missed, I think will make a big difference to them. And yeah, certainly not as locked in for Champions League football as much as Liverpool, but out of the rest of the pack, they've got to be the strongest contenders for it.
Yeah, I agree. It has been interesting watching Arsenal the last few weeks, especially in the league, because in cup competitions, especially in the Champions League, they seem to be absolutely fine. I think PSV, I'll be honest, were massively naive in that first leg. They left so much space for Martin Odegaard just to drift in and control the entire game, and that's what Man United didn't do. And so I do think that, yeah, Arsenal are going to be second. It's probably a little bit boring, maybe want a little bit of drama, but we're just being honest, that's what we think. And I think also the fact that Jesus, Havertz, and Tomiyasu are going to be out for at least this season, and that Saka, that star boy of yours, he's just round the corner. He's going to be back, hopefully in time for the quarterfinals of the Champions League. I think Arsenal will be fine, and at the very least, I think they will pick up at least 12 to 15 points, which should easily see them get second place considering the form of everyone else. So, we'll leave it there, because I don't think there's anything more that needs to be said. And we'll move on to Andoni Iraola's Bournemouth. Currently on 44 points, 3 points off 5th place and Champions League. Do have an FA Cup quarter-final against Manchester City, which could be very, very tasty. By the recent run of late, it seems like as they got the players back, the form in the league has dipped. Only 1 win, 1 draw, and 3 losses in the last 5. Only 4 points. Mixed recent form, but they've had a fantastic season so far, haven't they?
Yeah, fantastic season, playing some fantastic football, and a really, really good manager in Iraola. And I think when we were talking about Brighton and maybe things feeling a little bit more transitional, it really feels like Iraola has a very set team, very set system. And when you see them in action, like we saw against Spurs at the weekend, when they get going, they look absolutely fantastic. They look like one of the top sides when they're going forward, and they're in form. they've got a pretty decent run of fixtures left as well. 7 out of 10 of their last games are against teams in the bottom half, which is fantastic. Towards the end of that run, though, they have got City, Villa, and Arsenal, which is pretty tough. And I think if they can get some momentum over the next 5 or 6 games, they could get enough to keep them there. But there's a chance that they may be dropping points towards the end of the season, and that could see things crumble potentially, which is a shame because really, really enjoyed watching Bournemouth this season. And a good plus at the moment that they've got Evan Nilsson back, so I think he makes a big difference for them as well. So, yeah, they could be in European football, which is mental. To see Bournemouth in Europe would be crazy, but I think they could do it, to be honest. I really do.
Oh, I don't know. You sounded very optimistic at the end there. I am probably a bit slightly more pessimistic on Bournemouth. I think just because of the recent form, I do. I think they can score goals. They can score so many goals. I mean, the game against Tottenham. I mean, Tottenham leak goals from everywhere. But it just goes to show. I mean, I can't remember which goal it was, but the run by Kirkes, all the way from left back, driving the ball up the field, like breaking lung busting run all the way up, and then that cross into the far post, and then the slide, the sliding finish. I thought that's absolutely fantastic, and I think just go to show the exciting football the Bournemouth are playing. I worry about them defensively. I think with the likes of Zabani, Senesi, Araujo all out, Adam Smith out long term. I mean, maybe Senesi and Sabani might be back soon-ish, but they haven't played football in a little while. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to shut out teams, especially like you said, they got Arsenal, Aston Villa, and Manchester City, well, and Man United. Those are 4 of the last 5. I think they might have a decent couple of games upcoming in terms of Brentford at home, Ipswich at home, West Ham away, Fulham at home, Crystal Palace away. But I think those last 5, when it comes to crunch time, and Arsenal will want to be in the Champions League, Aston Villa will, Man City, will they get over the line? I am less optimistic about Bournemouth just because a bit similar to Fulham, a bit similar to Brighton. I think they could win or lose any game of football. And if you think about the fact that 48 points is the highest they've ever got in Premier League history, the fact they're already on 44 with 10 games to go, no matter what happens, this is going to be Bournemouth's best season ever, and I think that in itself is to be applauded.
Yeah, for sure. It's been an amazing season for them, and it feels like they're really growing and progressing, and I think next season they're going to come back even better. In terms of their defence, it's a really weird one with their defence because they haven't kept many clean sheets, but they've actually conceded the 4th least amount of goals in the league. They've only conceded 1 more goal than Nottingham Forest. Their expected numbers are a little bit worse. They are expected to concede more than they do. But then their attacking numbers are absolutely fantastic. 3rd in XG in the entire league. Their XG is 57, which is 10 more than the 47 that they actually have scored. So even though maybe they should be conceding a few more goals from their fairly decent defensive record, they should be scoring more as well, which is mental. I've got them in 7th. It sounds like maybe, Mev, you've got them in 9th?
Yeah, so I thought I was teeing this up perfectly with Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Newcastle to be like, who are you going to put in 5th, 6th, and 7th? But if you've got them in 7th, then I have a feeling I know who you put in 9th, but we're not going to say just yet. I do have them in 9th. It was tough with Bournemouth. It was tough with all the 4 remaining teams, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Villa, and Newcastle. But I had them in 9th just because I thought, do they have the experience? I know it's like how they're playing is different to how they're playing, and how I feel about them is different to what I normally associate with them, and that's what's sometimes difficult to do with this. But I do just think the other teams with the experience of making the Champions League will probably get them over the line. But I'm not confident. Are you confident that Bournemouth are going to finish 7th?
I wouldn't say confidence. I just like their next fixtures coming up, and I think they could get some good momentum going into those tougher games at the end of the season.
Will you compromise with me? Should we put Brighton down to 9th and put Bournemouth in 8th?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that's fine. Well, sorry, Brighton fans. If you are still watching from your section, we moved you down to 9th, and Bournemouth are in 8th, which perfectly sets up the next 3 teams. So we've got 5th, 6th, and 7th to fill in. We've got Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Newcastle. Let's start with Chelsea, who are currently in the Champions League places, currently in fourth place on 49 points, 2 points ahead of Manchester City. They've still got the Conference League to worry about. They are currently 2-1 up from the first leg against Copenhagen, and the second leg is going to be then returning to Stamford Bridge. What are your general thoughts about Chelsea this season? Do you think Champions League is a must for them?
No, I don't think it is a must. I think it's still, they still just don't feel quite there yet. They are better than they were last season as a whole. I don't know if there's been significant improvement to how they were playing at the back end of last season, where they were able to get Conference League football, and they had a pretty decent run of the last sort of 9-10 games or so. I think they were playing well. It feels like when Cole Palmer's not firing, and he hasn't been recently, they don't quite look like the same dangerous side. I don't think the attacking players around him are really stepping up in the absence of form. Defensively, I'm not convinced. And this generally is compared to, I think, the sides that we've already said are going to be finishing the Champions League, in terms of Arsenal, in terms of City, in terms of Liverpool. It does feel like there is still a gap between Chelsea and those teams, even if the points gap isn't that significant. They've got a few tough games as well left at the end of the year. I'm not sure on Chelsea. They're a really, really difficult side to call for me, and especially considering that they are actually ahead of Manchester City in the table at the moment. I'm not really sure what to think of them, to be honest. I definitely found Chelsea the hardest team to sort of place in the table in this prediction.
I actually completely agree. I think Chelsea are the one where if they turn up, they'll be fine. If they don't, they won't be. But you don't know which Chelsea's going to turn up, because the next two fixtures, Arsenal away, Tottenham at home. Then they've got 4 relatively easy fixtures against sides in the bottom half of the Premier League. And then the last 4 are Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, Man United at home, and the last game, Nottingham Forest away. So if the first, let's say 6 don't go well and don't pick up points, then those last 4 are going to be absolutely massive. And I will personally disagree. I think they need to be trying to get into Champions League football, because I think with the money they've spent, with the amount of money they owe for the players that they've already bought, I think that Champions League revenue is going to be massive for them to really alleviate some of that pressure. And I think that Conference League football for the first half of the season wasn't a worry, but for the second half it could be. I think just because of the fact that I looked at that squad, the starting lineup against Copenhagen, and I thought, okay, you know what, not too much of an issue. Arguably the strongest players were the midfield of Reece James, Caicedo and Palmer. 2 of the 3 were all substituted, so that's fine. But it was only 2-1. Maybe they should have been expected to beat Copenhagen a little bit more. And I think it will slowly start to attract them, because they will be going further and further and probably to the final and winning. I'm not certain on where Chelsea are going to finish, because I think they're a maybe. But we're not going to say exactly where, just because I think this is quite fun. So we're going to skip Chelsea. We're not going to say for Chelsea, Villa or Newcastle, and we're going to say it right at the end. And Aston Villa, 2 points off Manchester City on 45 points, but crucially, they played a game more. And we should say, we are recording this on the Monday, so we expect them to be through the Champions League quarterfinals against Club Brugge. What do you make of Villa, Toby?
Again, like Chelsea, a bit of a funny one. Not the most impressive season generally, I think. In the Champions League, they've been absolutely fantastic. And yeah, if they do go through against Club Brugge, against either Liverpool or PSG, that they could even get through in that. I really do think so. They've looked really, really strong in that competition. We know Emery's history with European football. But at the moment, they're on a negative goal difference, which I blew my mind when I saw that in the league. I thought they were performing much better than that. They've got a really, really tough run coming up. I do think they are probably going to focus on the Champions League over the league generally, if it has to come down to it. I think Villa, I would not put much money on Villa personally. For me, I'm not very convinced by them for these last 10 games. I think it's a really tough run, and they haven't maybe performed as well as they did last year. So yeah, it's for me not looking too positive for Villa, especially compared to Newcastle and Chelsea. How do you see it?
God damn it, we've given it away, haven't you? Yeah, I also agree. I think that with them, I think the Champions League getting through, getting the money from that, I think would be great. The fact that they're in the Champions League and the fact that they've got a manager in Unai Emery who's so experienced in European competitions, he could be the difference maker and could cause an upset. And I think they're absolutely right to prioritise and focus on that. Also with the FA Cup, they're at home to Preston North End. No, sorry, not at home. They're away to Preston North End, and I think that is one of the easiest teams they could have got in the quarterfinals. So they should be through to the semi-finals if they win that. You're talking about quarterfinals potentially of a Champions League. You're talking about semi-finals of an FA Cup, and considering the last 9 fixtures in the league, they play 7 of those teams are in the top 10. Obviously, themselves are also in the top 10, and the other teams they don't face are Liverpool and Chelsea. They face everyone else. That is tough. And still, the other two teams are Southampton away, which you would expect to be 3 points, but that's going to be either side of the quarterfinal in the Champions League, so that it might be tied legs, could be a potential for an upset there. And the other side is Man United away in the very last game of the season. That's not going to be easy either. So I'll be honest, I thought they could have done it, but the fact that they played a game already, FA Cup, Champions League, and the fixture difficulty, I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to make it, despite the fact that I think they have a great first team. They arguably have some of the best depth of the sides we're talking about in the top 10 as a whole, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it, really. So I'm assuming if we have 5th and 6th left, we're putting Aston Villa in 7th.
Yeah, I actually had them in ninth originally. I think that fixture run is so tough, and I think Bournemouth and Brighton will be able to pick up a few more points than them at the end of the season. So yeah, as we've got Bournemouth in 8th and Brighton in ninth, yeah, Villa the highest. I could put them for sure as 7th.
Okay, so Aston Villa in 7th, which means then it's between Chelsea and the final team, Newcastle. And like I said, recording on the Monday before the West Ham game. So we don't know what's happened, but at the time of recording, they're on 44 points, the same as Bournemouth. If they draw, they'll be on 45, the same as Villa, with playing a game less. And if they win, they'll be on 47, the same as Manchester City, which could be huge. I wish we were able to record this after this game so we knew what would happen. I expect them probably to have a positive result, so either a draw or a win, despite the fact that West Ham United have won in the last 2 games. I just think they'll be up for it because they want to put in a good team performance before the Carabao Cup final against Liverpool. So I expect them to either be on 45 or 47 points by the time this comes out. How do you see Newcastle? Because I think their starting 11 is amazing, but I think once they're missing a couple of players, they do struggle.
Yeah, and it has felt at times they have really dropped, and I thought again it almost a similar case to Villa where I thought they were performing a little bit better than they were. I think Newcastle at times have looked really, really good, but the points don't lie, and unfortunately it has been maybe at times a little bit disappointing for Newcastle. I think, like you said, with the quality they have, I would have expected them to be a little bit higher, especially with that midfield three of Tonali, Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes all now being fit and available. I think is a massive, massive plus for them. But over the next few games, Gordon, Botman is still out, and Lewis Hall being ruled out for the rest of the season is a really, really big loss, meaning that Trippier is going to be on that right and Livramento in the left-back position for the remainder of the season. They do still have a lot of quality, and they do have a pretty good run for the rest of the season, 7 out of 10 against the bottom half. Arsenal away being the toughest fixture for them. But we know Newcastle's recent history of Arsenal, they can certainly turn out a good performance. Yeah, maybe so far this season a little bit disappointing, but in these last few games, I expect Newcastle to actually be a bit better than they have been, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I think they will have an upturn in form, and the last 10, if there was to be a side that I could imagine getting 7, 8 wins, I think it could be Newcastle if they keep everyone fit. I will say though, I have no idea what impact the Carabao Cup final is going to have on them, because I think if they lose it, I think the team might be a bit demoralised. It could galvanise them, I have no idea. But I think my opinion is if they lose, they'll be a bit demoralised. If they win it, I think they'll be on absolutely cloud 9, but they'll also be like, well, we won a trophy for the first time since whenever. So that could potentially work in the opposite effect, and maybe they take their eye off the ball. I think the result of the Carabao Cup final will have an impact, but I just don't know what. And that's almost hard. That in itself, for me, is almost a bigger factor than, say, a team like Bournemouth or Brighton or Fulham still being in the FA Cup and having a couple more fixtures. because it is a final and they've got there again for the second time, I think, in 3 years. So I have no idea. What do you have any idea if they're going to win or lose, firstly, and what impact they may have?
If I had to bet on it, I think Liverpool are a little bit too strong for them at the moment. It is a cup final, though, so anything could happen. You wouldn't be surprised, Newcastle, if they put out a fantastic performance and nab it. But personally, I would think Liverpool are probably going to win. I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact. Like you said, I think if they win, it'll be really good for their form and their morale. I think if they lose, Eddie Howe is a fantastic manager and somebody who can turn that disappointment into, we need to focus on these last 10 games of the season and make it a positive season. So I think either result, they will be able to get positives out of it, and I think get through those last 10 games and play well still.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. I think it all depends on Alexander Isak, though. Keep him fit between now and the end of the season, and Newcastle should be okay. And in terms of this list, we've only got 5th and 6th left. It's between Newcastle and Chelsea. Have you been boring, Toby? Have you gone Chelsea?
No, I have gone for Newcastle in 5th place. How about you?
Okay, I've gone Chelsea.
Nice, a bit of difference, a bit of disagreement. That's good.
Okay, do you want to make your point for why Newcastle, and then I'll make the point for Chelsea, and then we'll have a debate about it.
It's very close. It's very, very close for me. I just think, like you said, I think the Newcastle, I think, have a really good chance to go on a good run, and I think that is a really, really big difference towards the end of the season and can really carry them over the line. Chelsea, I just think, are far too inconsistent, and yeah, they may win, but the next week there's never any certainty. It never feels like there's any sort of really strong runs of form with Chelsea at the moment, and I think with Cole Palmer's drop in form is a huge, huge issue for Chelsea at the moment, that if it doesn't get rectified, it doesn't really feel like players around him are stepping up. Whereas I think with Isak, he's got a good midfield behind him, he's got a good defence behind him, and he's got players supporting him around him, and even then his form doesn't seem to be drying up either. So I just think Newcastle have more strength in that team and more likely to go on a good run.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think why I went for Chelsea, and this was like literally the only decider, was obviously Cole Palmer's form has dipped and has arguably dipped at the worst time of the season. If you can have a dip at the beginning, but business end when you're going for, trying to achieve what your objectives are in the league, you need to be in form, and I think he will be after the international break, because I think the other players around him are coming back to full fitness. Nicholas Jackson should be back after the international break. I think he is a big loss, knitting the whole play behind him together, and I think we've seen without him in the squad how important a player he actually is with and without the ball. You've also got Madueke, Malagusto and Romeo Lavia all set to return at the beginning of April, and I just think if those players were to come back into the team, the galvanising effect it could have, plus the fact that the team might be on a bit of a morale boost by their wins in the Conference League, and yes, it might be a bit more tired, but I do look at some of their fixtures. I think Brentford away, Ipswich at home, Fulham away, Everton at home. These are teams that you don't hear the expression much anymore, but they should be on the beach, and I think that Chelsea will have too much quality to beat them. Although saying that, I have just looked again at the last four: Liverpool away, Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, Man United at home, Nottingham Forest away. It is literally a coin flip, isn't it, between Chelsea and Newcastle?
Yeah, how about we leave them as a 5th/6th and we leave it to the comments section to decide. Tell us who you think will be getting that Champions League spot. And it will save us having any arguments or disagreements, Mev.
Okay. Do you know what? Fair enough. I'm going to go with Chelsea. Toby's going to go with Newcastle. Let us know who you think in the comments below. And with that, we'll move on to the quiz.
Yep, another round of Squad Guesser, where we'll be having a starting 11 from a famous game revealed to us one player at a time, and we have 3 opportunities to guess what team and what game this is from. Scores on the doors: Mev is on 28 points and I'm on 37 points after 5 rounds, so I'm expecting a pretty tough one from yourself this week, Mev. So I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to say I'd like to go first, please, and get that out the way.
Well, you were always going to go first because I went first last week, so I don't know why you're trying to do all of that. But yeah, sure. It is... Just unnecessary aggro there. It is a club side,
Mm-hmm.
and they play in a 4-3-3.
Yep.
And your first player is the left central midfielder, and they are Brazilian.
Okay. Left centre mid Brazilian. I feel like there's far too many to pick from, so I'm not going to waste anyone's time, and I'm just going to spin it again, please, Mev.
No worries. So your second player is the goalkeeper, and they are German.
Okay, that's a little bit nicer. I like that. German goalkeepers. So we could be looking at Jens Lehmann for Arsenal, Bernd Leno for Arsenal. Not too many Brazilian centre mids. Maybe Gilberto Silva if it was Lehmann. Could be Ter Stegen or Neuer as well. Left centre mid Brazilian. Don't think too many when Ter Stegen was there. Could be potentially someone like Luis Gustavo at Bayern if it's Neuer. A few options still floating around there. So let's spin again, please.
Sure. Your next position is the left winger, and they are French.
French. Ooh, okay. This could be... I'm looking at Ribéry, Gustavo and Neuer at the moment. Any other French left wingers coming to mind? With a German goalkeeper. Ooh, could be PSG. Could be Kevin Trapp in goal. Mbappe on the left wing. And who would that Brazilian centre mid be though? Not too sure. Let's go for one more spin to see if that leans us either way.
Sure. Your fourth player is the left back, and they are English.
Ah, okay. That's big. That is big. That's obviously taking Bayern out, taking PSG out. It's more than likely going to be an English side now. Bernd Leno. If it was Bernd Leno, who would be a French left wing for Arsenal? I don't think there really is one, is there? A German goalie and an English left back. Could it be Stefan Ortega in goal in maybe one of Manchester City's finals? But again, French left wing, I don't know who that would be. Ooh. I think I'm going to have to spin again. Yeah, stuck on this one.
No worries. Your next player is your number 9, and they are also English.
Oh, English number 9. With a German goalie. God, this is really... I'm struggling with this one. Let's go through the top sides who are most likely to be in cup finals. Spurs German goalies, can't think of any. Chelsea German goalies, again, I don't think there's any. United, City, Arsenal. Oh, I'm struggling here, struggling. With an English striker. Oh, could that be Loris Karius in goal with Callum Wilson up front in that Newcastle League Cup final? I'm pretty sure he played in it, actually. Don't know about any of their players, but it's a fun guess. So I'm going to go for the Newcastle side that lost the League Cup final to Manchester United.
How the hell have you just got that?
What a punt. It was Karius.
What?
I had to do it, even if it was just for the memes.
I just don't know how you've done that.
We'll take it.
I mean, your next player coming up was going to be an English right centre midfielder, which would have been Longstaff.
Nice.
Then I thought, okay, maybe it would be easier because you had a Swiss right centre back, and you're going, oh, maybe this is Shah. But how? I don't know how you've done that. I don't know how you've done that. I don't know how I'm meant to beat that.
It was the League Cup chat, I think, earlier, Mev. You mentioned that they were in the final twice in the last 3 years, and it must have been stuck in the back of my head. And yeah, topical, I guess, with that game coming up this weekend. It's those little links you throw in, Mev, those little clues that have helped me there, I think. So yeah, 7 points. I would take that all day.
Yeah, the whole team was Karius, Trippier, Shah, Botman, Byrne, Bruno, G, Joe Linton, Longstaff, Almiron, Wilson, and St. Maximan. So you would have got Shaw and then for Swiss and Almiron, Paraguay next. So I'm sure after that you would
Yeah.
have got it. But before, do you know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. Well played.
Are you ready for yours?
No.
Too bad. I'm going to give you your player anyway. So it is an international side playing a 4-2-3-1, and your first player played for Atletico Madrid.
Atletico Madrid. Hang on. What position?
Sorry, I didn't even tell you that. That's shocking. Striker, number 9.
I was like, okay, Atletico Madrid. I was writing down. I was like, I don't even know what position. Okay. An international side. So you know I'm bad at these. Have you been nice to me? Who knows? Do you know what? Not enough information. I'm assuming they're probably going to be Spanish. I'd like to spin again, please.
Yep, we will spin again, and you've got number 3, which is your right-sided centre-back, and they played for Real Sociedad.
Oh, Sociedad. Okay. I feel like this is probably Spanish, so I feel like saying that maybe the striker is Morata, and maybe the centre back is Lenormand. I'm trying to think. It could be French. I'm trying to think. It could be Griezmann. Could be Alvarez. I don't know. Can I spin again, please, mate?
You certainly can, Mevin. So your next player is going to be number 6, which is one of your defensive midfielders, and they played for Manchester City.
Manchester City. Okay. Oh my God, who could this be? Manchester. I hate the international ones. Manchester City. Defensive midfielders. Rodri. Spain. I'm just going to go along the lines of Spain. Spain. Could be Gundogan, Germany. Atletico Madrid, don't think so. No, not Germany. Fernandinho. Brazil. Brazilian striker. No. Brazilian centre back. No. I think it's Spain. Can't remember who started from. Maybe it would have been Morata. I'm gonna go for a guess, mate. Can I go for, and I'm gonna guess, the Spanish team that won the Euros just recently, beating England 2-1.
You can go for that, Mevin. And you will be correct. Huge 9 pointer there.
Oh,
very well done, mate. That was great knowledge for you to get Robin Lenormand. I think that was one of the toughest ones on the list. I had completely no idea. I think I would have really struggled with that one. So Robin Lenormand at centre back, Rodri in DM, and Morata up front. A lot of these players left clubs almost straight after the Euros as well. So I thought, again, like Lenormand, he went to Atletico very shortly after, Morata to AC Milan. So I was maybe going to throw those in if they came a little bit later down the line. Full side being Unai Simon, Carvajal, Lenormand, Laporte, and Cucurella. Rodri and Fabian Ruiz. Lamine Yamal, Dani Olmo, Nico Williams, and Alvaro Morata up top. So yeah, very strong 9 points there, mate. Smashed it.
Thank you, mate. I don't know why. I just always really rated Lenormand, so I've been keeping tabs on him. So maybe that's why. But it also was a fairly recent tournament as well. So I definitely have you to thank for. You definitely made it easy for me. But what are the scores now?
Well, you could have had Al Nasser as your other centre back with Laporte, which could have been a complete curveball.
It could have been. But yeah, there we have it. That's it for this week's episode of the podcast. Let us know who you think is going to be finishing in the Champions League places this season. Is it going to be Newcastle? Is it going to be Chelsea? And do you agree or disagree with the rest of our picks? And we'll see you next week. Thank you everyone for watching.